Hello, scholars. Welcome to lesson 2-1.18, Mughal influence. We're going to be looking more at the cultural side of the Mughal Empire today, also dabble in its decline and fall as well. So, the Mughal Empire. The Mughal Empire unified India as a single empire for over 300 years. Now, some of these years were more successful than others. There was certainly a golden age of the Mughal Empire and a long decline. But we really do see this height under the leadership of Akbar. And then it continues to expand even after Akbar's reign down into the southern parts of India, down into here. So as this expansion is occurring during the reign of Akbar and immediately afterward, you start to see a period of internal peace and prosperity. You tend to see this whenever an empire is expanding. Whenever they're expanding outward, especially if they've got good, solid leadership, they're going to be fighting all their wars externally. They're fighting all their wars at their borders. And internally, they've got a lot of peace. So all of this area right around here, the Ganges River Valley, the Indus River Valley, those are very peaceful, prosperous areas of this empire as all the wars are being fought in the south and every now and again up against the Safavids over here. So this internal peace, especially around the river valleys, which is going to be where your agriculture is and where your population bases are, that's going to lead to a lot of prosperity there. And it's also going to lead to a flowering of culture. Now, Akbar is going to be the one who really ushers this in. And he was the first Mughal ruler to unify the empire. We talked about Babur, and he was a military leader, but he didn't know how to rule a unified empire. Akbar does. He believed that toleration of ethnic, religious, and cultural differences would be what tied the people of his empire to his rule. And he was right. Once people saw that this ruler was not going to try to dictate to them how they should live their lives, they were very willing to follow him, especially when they saw the prosperity that came with that following. So under the rule of Akbar and a few of the later empires, the Mughals expand, they grow, they become wealthy, and they become one of the most powerful empires of the world for about 100 years. Now, religion was a big part of this practice of toleration because the Mughals believe in this free practice of religion. Now, they themselves were not non-religious. These are not the early Mongol rulers, which were just not religious people and therefore didn't care. These are very religious people. The Mughal rulers are Sunni Muslims. But even the most devout of Muslims did not like their particular brand of Sunni Islam because they allowed themselves to dabble in other religions and be drawn into conversations about the validity of other religious practices. And one way that this is really clearly seen is that Akbar himself becomes almost this semi-divine character with godlike qualities that he tries to emphasize to the people because he's ruling over a large Persian ethnic group within his nation. And the Persians are used to their rulers being a god figure. And if the Persians are used to being ruled by a god and Akbar wants to have the Persians accept his rule, he starts to take on some of these characteristics and some of these traits, which some of the Muslims within his empire dislike. We saw this in one of the documents that we read for our DBQ. But within this balance, Akbar is gaining the acceptance of a large portion of his empire. Another way that he did it, non-Muslims had the same rights as others. We saw this in the Ottoman Empire as well, but in the Ottoman Empire, non-Muslims had to pay higher taxes. The Mughals did not do that. You could be Hindu, you could be Christian, they didn't care. All the same rights, all the same taxes. Within the economy, we see, again, internal peace leads to economic strength. And we see the Mughals doing very well with their internal peace. They're focusing their economy on building roads to expand trade, developing cash crops such as spices and tea. These cash crops are grown to be exported, they're grown for wealth. There's a high demand for this stuff in Europe, and Mughal India knows this. They grow these crops, they turn them into spices, they sell them to to Europe for large profits. And it wasn't just on European ships that they were doing this, because the Mughal shipbuilders were quite successful. So they were very good at this particular science, this industry. Mughal ships were the match of Europeans. The only reason they weren't sailing to Europe is because they didn't need to for that trade. They could go through the Ottomans more easily, plus the Portuguese and the Europeans were coming to them. Mughals were just a bit more efficient with their trade in that way. But their ships were good enough that they were being purchased by Europeans for this trade. So how then does a wealthy, prosperous, internally at peace nation fall? Same way we start to learn that most people fall. It is internal power struggles. As the Mongols had, as the Timurid dynasty had, the followers of Timur the Lame, we start to see internal struggles. The royal family turning on itself and fighting over power. And we see one ruler after another taking over in this power struggle. And while these Mughals are distracted, their people are falling under other influences. Europeans, in particular, the English, are going to be asserting their own separate influence and separate control. And really, by the 1780s, the English, which underwent a transformation, now we call them the British, are essentially in control of all of India. They have taken over the country from the Mughals. Once the Mughals had really fully realized that they were in danger of losing control of their country, it was kind of too late. And they held on to a partnership with the English for as long as they could, but eventually the English, British take over and rule India, and they will rule India right into the 1900s. So that is Mughal influence and decline. We'll be talking about the Safavids pretty soon.